Yeah. I mean, you do anyway, but you never know where all this stuff is.
We actually have a set for you. So you can use your hand and just copy. Here, over speakers. It's round and on the left. So don't like this. This is what
I have this. Oh, okay.
And maybe also and there's more. So these ones are the same. These ones are the you just add it. Also your map.
And then no, it would be great to have this on the yeah. Yeah, you can
over your
like I mean and where you normally have to do it, and then I got yeah. Yeah.
But it's only deciding not to be the weather.
So, I mean,
All right.
okay.
There's a camera here. Are there remote people as well? Oh, okay, no, just for our purposes. If you're basically looking at it as like a street market, exactly. You can walk around. What was the second for the VC investment course? What do you well, because here we have a pitch and then the executive summary. So I just suppose I assume there are two things for the VC. There was this for VC. Okay, like a pitch deck also. Startup that already exists and we met some companies. Yeah. Otherwise, I have a reflection paper to Saturday, and that's it. All right. I know we had also an investment memo. Sorry. Yeah, we had an investment memo. Yeah. I mean, it's free credits, right? Discord. Yeah. Should have taken that one. Yeah, but it's still easy free credit. Oh, yeah.
All right. On Switch functionality again. It's 5 o'clock. So, are we all here? Hopefully. So I'm very glad to have Simon here. I've known Simon since a couple of years, back from my time at University of St. Gallen when he was the president of Start Summit, Start Global. Maybe you will still talk a little bit about it, but I found here some information about you online, and I will just quickly go through the. Yeah, I left that part out. This part I left out. No pictures. No, you made us curious. No Facebook pictures. Simon serves as the CFO at Valiro, a drone startup based in Zurich. They recently raised Series A, which he will dive deeper into his talk. Simon brings extensive experience in running and building finance and operations departments in various startups and scale-ups. Simon holds a master in law and economics, hence combines a strong legal background with financial acumen an entrepreneurial spirit at heart who thrives on collaborating with ambitious individual organizations. Simon is dedicated to driving financial excellence and innovation within the Bolero team. And now, of course, I won't switch the slides, but on the slides that will be on the study net, you will then also see, or just when you connect with Simon on LinkedIn, that he has been not only the CFO of Bolero, but before that he was the VP of Finance and Legal at Alterion. You might also know this strong startup. Then he was actually a CEO and founder of Trion. And as I mentioned before that, he was the president of Start Global, then the head of finance and legal and managing director Start Fund. So without further ado, I hand over the mic to Simon, and I'm very excited to hear what you have to share with our audience today.
Hey everyone, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for introducing. It's always nice if a marketing team puts together a nice, intro about yourself. I knew that this type of explanation about me existed, but I never used it.
I thought so.
It's there out on the internet. I think even on our website.
Yeah, actually. This is where I found it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good. So it's our marketing team describing what the finance and legal person does in very, very nice words.
This is why we have now you here to explain how it
yes,
really
it's
is.
actually boring. No, so who is studying at HSG here? Okay, good. And the rest all ETH? Good, and that's good. Everything at HSG you can also learn by doing. I joined Bolero 2023, so last year, and before that, the ETH founders did everything themselves. So 4 years, the company survived and raised 10 million without any support of HSG students. But anyways, I will come to that later. No offense to the HSG students, I believe that there's a lot of great things to learn and network for sure. So Bolero, what we do is we revolutionize work at height. So we are an ETH spin-off founded in 2019. We are 35 people today. We have raised a total of 22 million, which, in the beginning of the company has been mainly through business angels and grants. And then earlier this year, with my arrival at the company and the CEO, who is also not without an ETH background, basically we raised the first venture capital round at Bolero with Cherry Ventures, a fund in Germany, pretty renowned. So my background is law and economics. So I'm actually a lawyer, and then after, as Melanie told you, after the studies where I had my first entrepreneurial experiences, I founded my own company in fintech. We scaled the team to roughly 10 people head count, and then after a year, how things happens, we didn't align on the management team, on the founders team. We split up because of our screwed up cap table. I could talk an hour only about that, but I will not. But there's more interesting topics. Anyways, a lot of learnings by failing a company. And then I was looking for something a little bit more advanced, where Alterion came in place. There were 60 people when I joined in 2021, and I was very lucky, but also unlucky that the guy, the COO who hired me back then, basically left 3 months after I arrived. So I was there, like, really not a lot of experience back in the days, and there was this kind of parent company in Switzerland, 2 subsidiaries in the US, another subsidiary in Germany, everything there, very chaotic. And my first task was basically to make sure that the transition from the COO who left happened. So, I was there, a lot of chaos, finance, legal. We have at least a people team who took care of all the HR topics, onboarding, offboarding, people administration, which is a lot as well. And then later on, I built up my own team. I had somebody in legal. I had accounting teams outsourced here in Switzerland, in the US, and in Germany that I led. as well as in IT, we had one guy who covered the whole infrastructure. So I learned a lot over the 3 years at Ethereum, or almost 3 years. And then I got to know the founders of Bolero, and they were at the stage where, you know, inflection point. They had go-to-market. They had the first generation of their product back in 2022, and yeah, asked me if I could do the scale up again, and I was excited about the opportunity, and joined the Bolero team last year, actually. So yeah, any questions on that? Or and for sure, everything started at St. Gallen at Start Global, actually, which was back when I attended the assessment year. Only like, oh, the cool guys are at Start, so I need to join them. We were like a little conference at the University of St. Gallen back then, and we transitioned to the Olma Messen, which was a like huge chaos. You know, you cannot imagine how you scale a 300 people conference to 1,600, and now I mean it's 5,000. It's the biggest student-led conference. So impressive what has been developed after even the years when I was not there anymore. One of the most important things was for sure raising the $1 million start fund to make sure that it's financially stable, which we saw at COVID was very important to save the organization. So that was a fundamental part in raising this capital and structure the fund. Now it's being transitioned to a foundation area. I'm still a little bit involved and coaching and helping them. So you can never let go. They have been part of time. Cool. Yeah, that's me and what I'm doing today. I'm going to talk about how to actually probably just build a company, and I want to share with you some errors that I've seen that didn't work and that I've done myself, and I think it's very easy to avoid them, especially because, as mentioned, it's fundamentals of how to build a company. Everything that I do is something that you can do in whatever company you build. Robotics, AI, medical, you know, and each of the companies will have a little tweak in mostly in compliance and regulations, where I'm not an expert in, but a lot of things are very much copy paste, scale, and communication topics in that. So I have 4 topics which I will very quickly run through, and then we will go and make a little Q&A. So finance, basically my advice here is at every company that I joined today, and that I saw also when people reached out to me to basically get some advice or help on how they should run their processes. Every single startup, if it's AI, robotics, their financial processes are just manual. So I'm very, very surprised how then people are going to upload receipts on Google Drive and you know, connect it somehow, download it again, and then upload it to Yokoi or any other accounting tool that they use. It's insane. So I think get familiar with an ERP system or with a system that can digitize your whole processes in finance very early on in your company journey. It sounds very silly. I've not seen a company that has started from scratch like fully digital, which hurts me, because when it's easiest to implement an ERP is actually when you don't have any data to migrate or any data to work with. So do it very, very early on. You can start with Bexio and Google Sheets in the beginning. Just make sure you keep up flexible. You stay flexible and adaptive. And because your business model will change, your accounting cycles will change. So make sure that you iterate fast, but you have a clear vision on that. If you need support, ask people. There's like hundreds of people who have done that before. So it's really not about you inventing that wheel from scratch. It's done there in that. You can even reach out to me. I will give you a half an hour and you will learn already a lot. one thing about accounting in insourcing and outsourcing and how to build your finance team. I think in the beginning, and still we work with an outsourced accountant at Volero who just oversees and does the, very low key tasks that require specific knowledge but don't require a lot of work to do. So example given, taxes, value-added tax reports, outsource this. You don't need to build this capability yourself. It's a waste of time. It's always the same. It's regulation. Also payroll accounting. Don't do it yourself. Just outsource it. You need to understand it so that you can ask the consultant or in Switzerland, they are called Treuhänder. So they will do it. The only thing what you need to make sure is, and that's the next point, fundraising, make sure that your accountant knows what the fundraising will imply later. Because in every single company that I joined as well, I realized that Swiss accountants, they think in quarters and years. But investors, they think in month and month-to-month growth. So if your financial data is being on a quarterly schedule, and then your investor is asking you, hey, can you send me a list of your last 10 or first 10 customers and show me the revenue development over the last 12 months on a monthly basis? That's a question, it will come. And if you have an accountant who is like stubborn on his quarterly, in Switzerland, we do accruals on a yearly basis and we do financial reports on a quarterly basis, it will make it very hard to show that to investors. And it's easy to do monthly closing schedules with accountants. You just need to tell them. You need to lead your outsourced accountants. You need to tell them what to do as they were an employee of yourself, to make sure you meet your stakeholders' needs in the end. Taxes as well. I mean, in the early days, you have one company. Will most likely be a Swiss entity or a US entity, very easy. Taxes are not interested once you're not profitable. So don't bother yourself, just outsource it to the accountant. They know what to do it. It becomes more difficult once you add subsidiaries, because then you have intercompany transfers and stuff. Just make sure that, again, once you start your adding different subsidiaries, to think about how you're going to optimize your taxes once you become profitable. I think it's very, very far out for companies. Most of the companies will face that issue like in year 5 to 10. But the early thoughts about that are important, and it's also connected to your accounting schedules, your ERP system, etc. So if you have a market in the US, make sure that you already prepare how you go into that market. Are you going from your Swiss entity? We are in a market at Volero, general oil and gas market. Most of the customers, they don't want to see a foreign vendor, a supplier. They don't want to see a Swiss company. They want to see a US company serving them. So we just built a subsidiary, a US company that can be the contractual partner of this entity. And then, we do a Swiss transfer to the US entity, which is an intercompany transfer, and then we go to the end customer. And it implies some accounting and automation there, to make sure you think of very early. Insurances, take a broker. There's many. They don't charge money. It's something that you don't need to build capabilities early on. You will learn it with the expertise. I've done both. At Alteron, I've taken over a broker that I really didn't like to work with. I switched and I took all the knowledge in-house. And with Volero, we have a broker that I'm very, very happy with. I didn't change it. He's doing a tremendous job. We're in safe hands. I have no need to change it. Cool. And then probably fundraising. I mean, that's probably the most interesting. I mean, fundraising is really like, it's something individual. Never outsource fundraising. It will not work. So we have a lot of people reaching out, hey, are you already looking to raise your Series B? We can support you with a 1 or 2% success fee. It will not work. Nobody can sell your company as good as yourself, because nobody is as convinced as yourself. And then, I mean, in the early days, go to business angels. I mean, I'm sure you guys have talked about that. Business angels first, probably try also some grants or non-dilutive funds that you can raise with foundations. And then later on, once you have built a case for a venture capital firm, then, I mean, at Volero, it was really playbook like of fundraising. I couldn't believe it after it happened. So we went out to the market with a polished deck. We went to like 50 VCs, third tier VCs. We knew that, you know, if they don't want to invest, it's fine. We just, you know, learn how to pitch and we iterate on the pitch deck. 3 months or 2 months later, like around Christmas, we realized, okay, we're ready for tier 2, tier 1 investors. We started to reach out, a lot of interest. We had very, very like powerful pitches. They flew in to Switzerland. They watched our product. Everything looked like, okay, now we're going to get the term sheet right. We talked to roughly 80 potential investors by the week of Christmas. We were about running out of money by Christmas, so we didn't have the choice. We needed to close that. Yeah, Christmas came, everything shut down. VCs also shut down, and first week of January, our current investors decided to give us a little bit more breath. So very easy, we had 3 more months. Cool. All the investors that were so excited prior Christmas dropped out the first week after Christmas in the new year. So it was really very, very weird, because VCs are so hypocritical. They invest in startups, but they don't like risk, you know. So beginning of the year, we were there, square zero, let's go out. Next round of tier 1 investors. And then we were really pushing hard. Our sales was ramping up January and February tremendously. So we scaled from 1.7 million in ARR to 2.4 within 2.5 months. And having this track record, January, February, having a fully polished pitch, it just happened that then a guy at the bus stop talked to our CEO, and then this guy introduced us to Cherry Ventures partner. We had a call with them. They flew into Zurich. We showed them everything. They talked to customers. While they were in Zurich, we organized the customer calls. And then basically 2 weeks later, they did the whole due diligence. They offered a term sheet. And I mean, the funds were in 1.5 months later, which was probably the fastest closing schedule that I had, but we had no choice. I called ZKB actually to be able to overdraw our account for the salaries. End of April was a really crazy time. I had a flight to Thailand for my vacation on the 25th of April. I knew when I booked it over Christmas and New Year that either I'm going with the salaries paid or without. It turned out that everything worked out pretty lucky and good. So that's a story about our fundraising. It's all about momentum. It's all about luck and heavy persistency. I mean, back in January and February, I reached out to at least 10 VCs over LinkedIn and email every single day. And you know, this actually motivated the other team members to work on the product, to work on sales, to enforce every single last drop of sweat to make it happen. And that's the entrepreneurial power that forms a nice team, that gives motivation, that also gives you optimism all the time when it's not going well. Very important. Cool. Legal. Corporate housekeeping, something that you can easily give to a lawyer. Talk to Karim from Kellerhals, talk to Ramona from Valdevis. They all know to do it. They have a lot of experience also. They see many documents from other law firms, from their own law firms. No point in doing that yourself. I think the only thing what I would say here, and I've seen many shareholder agreements and other agreements within the corporate housekeeping area of companies, don't try to invent a new language. First of all, it's going to be expensive because your lawyer likes to customize contracts because that gives more billable hours. And then second, your partner that you're going to find, investors or employees with your employee stock option plan, they don't understand your customized language that you're trying to build. It needs to be standard. It needs to be in a frame that can be repeatable and everybody understands when you go out there. Also means like your cap table, don't over-engineer anything. Keep it simple. It will hit back later on in your journey as a company builder. Internal regulation, I mean, take risks. I always say don't take too much risks in those areas. I've attended a speech at Start Summit actually 2 years ago when a guy said entrepreneurship is a constant stretch between taking a risk and being in prison, which I think is the stupidest ever saying. Don't take a risk that is close to any criminal acts. You can take risks where financial damage happens. That's why we're all here. But I mean, it's have your if you're working in drones, example, have your export control under control. It's a criminal act to export things that are on a sanctioned list. So don't mess up with those things. Talk to a lawyer. Make sure that you're all in order there. Material contracts. Also, there, don't invest very early in having a set of templates that you can share with customers and build up relationships, because it will change over time. You start with a subscription model, then you 2 months later, you will realize, oh, our customers, they like more custom usage-based business models. So don't start off with the first contract and try to roll it out. Be adaptive and only let the lawyer, again, only create what you really need in a specific case. But don't try to do it yourself. It will backfire as well. ChatGPT is not a lawyer. Intellectual property. Elon Musk once said he thinks intellectual property is a waste of time. We have just been granted a patent. I don't know what it helps. You have to publish your IP, and software can anyways not be patented. So make sure that you talk to a patent lawyer and really the first decision that you need to take. Am I going to protect my IP through any kind of legal enforcement, or do I treat it just as a trade secret internally, where then later on cybersecurity and protection of your facilities comes in place? Data protection, it's a must, GDPR, but also there, I'm very in favor of taking a lot of risk in data protection. I've never seen somebody who files a claim against a startup. Meta and Google are the first to be claimed there. So make sure that you don't screw it up too much. But data protection is basically probably the last priority in my opinion. Any immediate questions there?
Maybe a small addition. Exactly. So I was going to mention that next week we have a lecture on patenting digital innovations. And what you say is correct. The software cannot be patented as such. It counts as IP, intellectual property of the company, but it cannot be filed for patent. However, processes can, right? So that's what we'll see during next week's course, that all kinds of processes, deep learning pipelines and everything can be patented. So in this sense, you can still ensure or bring mode with intellectual property, even though it's software based, the process itself can be patented, which is basically what next week's course we'll talk about, but that's an important remark, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But again, there, if you want to process or keep it as a trade secret, needs to be a separate discussion at all.
Maybe I already jump on intellectual property. Can you, and otherwise I will share some of the really bad stories, how this can turn badly if you don't, like, I can just give one example, but what I found very important, and I didn't know that back then, but is if you, for example, on the one hand, if you start off as founders, but you don't have any legal document or you in place, and a founder is working already on the software, and the founder leaves, and at one point you want to exit, that could become a problem because then the IP of the software is still not clear whether part of it belongs to this one person who left early because he didn't have a contract in place. So that's one point. So always make sure that you have some sort of legal document. And another thing is the same if you, for example, have people from other countries that work with you. So really make sure that, especially software engineers from wherever they work from, that they kind of sign a document where they say that the owner of the code is the company. You know, because there again and again I hear stories where companies want to be bought or want to exit, and it kind of falls through because the whole chain of intellectual property cannot be done because they're looking for a software engineer that was working for this company 10 years ago and had some sort of things to do with it. So
no, I can add on that. So when Cherry Ventures did their due diligence this year with us, they looked at all the IP assignment agreements of our founders, especially because, you know, Volero has been founded in 2019, but the concept has been developed years before in a master thesis, and then, you know, there was PhD involved, then there was the BIS Technology Translation Center involved, you know, where the people were first employed by the incubator at ETH Zurich, then the company spun off. So you see, like, where is this IP going? And then we had to reissue all the IP assignment agreements. By the way, they need to be wet ink signed in Switzerland. So DocuSign is not a good option for that. And then also they asked us, hey, do you have any kind of remote.com or deal.com employees? And it's very important because you feel like, okay, you know, I as a company, I have a relationship with deal.com, and they employ those remote employees. It's illegal in Switzerland to do that, but everybody does it. And then you need to make sure that what this guy works on in terms of software, algorithms, or whatever, is being assigned to you, but you don't have a relationship with this guy, a legal one. So you need to make sure that the IP assignment happens through this triangle. So you know that those are mechanics that lawyers can always help. But that's a good point, and that's my anecdote of it.
Maybe as a question or easy hack, if you pay people in a direct relationship, it usually guarantees you the IP, or not?
No, it's not. Okay. No, even employment agreement, it does not.
Okay.
The employment agreement exactly with engineers need to be handwritten, signed, and needs to have an IP assignment clause to the company. Otherwise, by default, same as with books or music, whatever you produce is the Urheberrecht, it's copyright. You know, it's not it's part of intellectual property, but copyright is being assigned to the one who writes it. So.
And this is very, like, it sounds maybe very dry, and it's already like 5:30, but this is really, really important because I know a couple of startups, they actually had to reissue all their contracts, employer contracts. And it's good if you do it before you actually need it, but remember, like, there will be a point where it's too late, and then realizing that all your employer contracts are not valid in Switzerland because you didn't sign it by hand. It's really.
I mean, it happened to us. We reissued all 35 employment agreements again. People, again, their on offboarding processes, make sure to build that very efficiently. There's like softwares and everything. Use tools, Personio, Bamboo HR, or HiBob. It's invented. Don't do spreadsheets or anything custom build. Use whatever is out in the market. Very easy. Compensation and ESOP, I think it's very, very an interesting topic that we can also spend hours and hours to talk about. What I saw a very nice graph like 2 weeks ago on LinkedIn, and I still see that many startups are doing it fundamentally wrong when communicating ESOP to early employees. In the beginning of the company, they try to, say, okay, you're joining a startup. We cannot pay you 100K a year, so you will earn 90K, and then you will receive 10K in terms of ESOP. But how would you value ESOP today when the company is 99% to chance to fail and 1% to be successful? There's no real value. ESOP is valued at 0 in the beginning. So make sure that you talk about ownership of the company, and you talk about how you're going to be part of the large exit. So how we communicated at Bolero today is we tell the people the outstanding number of shares of our company, which is public anyways on cfix.com. So even if you're not going to found a company, but you're going to join another startup and you're going into those negotiations, go and look out on cfix.com your company, and then see the outstanding number of shares at 10%, which is probably the ESOP, which is not in there, and then divide your amount that you're being granted through the total amount of outstanding shares, and then you have your percentage of the company ownership. And if it's less than probably 0.02 in the early days or 0.05%, you could then argue and negotiate more. I think also the perception that, oh, I need to have 1% of a company, it's out of mind. It's never going to happen. For just an employee. So if you're going to have a key leadership role, then for sure we're going to talk about that. But a lot of people, also friends of mine who have been working like 10 years in consulting, they call me, hey, I'm negotiating with a startup. I asked them for 120 grand and 1% of the company. Like, are you stupid? It's not going to happen. I've been working 3-4 years to build a company, and now it's even arrogant to ask for 1% of a company.
So maybe as a question for them, if they want to work for a startup in this 90K, 10K example, what should they ask for instead? More like 50K in shares, because it will...
No values. The shares in the early days of a company, I wouldn't ask for shares. I would say if you have 0.1% of a company, it's a lot, and it's good enough to say I can take the risk to accept a cash compensation that is probably lower on what your market rate would be. That's my advice there. And then again, I mean, your cash compensation needs to cover your expenses.
There's also a problem in the European startup market where the startups are more B2B oriented and thus have less market cap than B2C oriented United States startups. So 0.1% if going to go exit for 50 million would only make, I cannot calculate it right now, but you got the point.
Yeah.
So how does it differ in the US and in here? Maybe it's 0.1% in both cases, but what about in the States and in here, and therefore the 0.1%?
Well, I mean, it's a very broad question because it depends a lot on industry. I mean, yes, for sure, the US exits are in general higher. The US thinks bigger. The US everything is more, better, and bigger, which also applies to startups. I mean, in general, US employee stock options also work way differently because in Switzerland we can grant options at zero exercise or what, like nominal exercise price value, and in the US it cannot. It needs to be the fair market value of the current situation of the. So, I mean, I cannot give you a clear answer on that. You need to check really case by case, and but I think if you have 0.1% of a company, and a startup, a successful scale-up company shouldn't be valued below 300 million at any exit point, in Europe nor in the US. So if the founders have not the ambition to build, let's say, a billion company or at least a 500 million company, then I wouldn't actually go into equity compensation discussions at all.
So when you say 0.1%, how many employees were already there? How do you picture it?
You mean now at Bolero example given or
No, in general, if you were.
I mean, in general, I would say if you're employee number 5 to 20, that's probably the range. If you're number 5, you can go a little bit higher. If you're number 20, then a little bit lower. Also, depending when it was founded, is there already product market fit or any kind of proof that this is going to fly? It's always a risk. I mean, in the end, what you're doing is you're investing opportunity costs. Opportunity costs for a company that is scaling faster and getting closer to an exit, or going to a consultancy and earn 150K a year. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, 0.1% still seems quite low. Like if it's a 300 million, I get 300,000. Like I don't see that this probably compensates the risk I took, like by taking over salary.
Yeah, I mean,
you say it's fair for an employee.
If you earn 90K after your studies, and let's say the market would pay you 110, 20K per year, and you stay 4 years, that's your vesting schedule, it's basically 80K, and you earn 300K for your equity participation. You're already 4x higher at the equity, and that's the perception that you see in the internet on your Instagram reels of multi-billion exits and everybody is rich, and it's not going to work like that. It's not reality. And I mean, for sure, if a founder is happy to provide you more than that, take it. You're a good negotiator. But let's be sure that if you build your own company, don't spread around with your ESOP, because you will have 100 employees who you want to incentivize with your equity. And then if you give to everyone like 1%, or I mean, it will not work, but if you give everyone 0, then you have 10% allocated and everybody has 0.1 in average. So you need to think like that. From an individual standpoint, yes, probably it might be perceived as low, but from a company perspective, it's actually not very expensive. Equity is always very expensive.
Generally, then employees ask, like, how long do you think it will be until IPO because exit? Because then it really matters how much you spread it over time, right? So
it's
3-4 years.
It's a question that is regularly asked. I usually always tell them, I mean, now at our stage, we are a not profitable company, so we need to first become profitable. Then we need to raise growth capital to make sure that we can scale what we have achieved now to at least, if you want, let's say robotics, 10x multiples. So you need to have 50 million revenue each year to make sure you have a 500 million valuation. So it will take time, and I mean, everybody asks and everybody's impatient. I always tell them, look, if you're not patient for that, don't join a startup, because it's exhausting, it's long, it takes time, and then you have like lucky Slack or Meta or Nvidia now, where everybody becomes a millionaire, billionaire. So, and we all only read that, right? I have a friend who worked at a startup 1.5 years, and like 2 months ago, he texted me, I've just received 120K from the exit. He didn't believe that it's going to happen, just wired to his bank. something that comes out like 1.5 years tenure at the company. Nice, right?
Maybe a question here as well is, so you say equity is expensive. You have this great example of your friend getting like a good payout from an exit. But for example, for founders, many founders leave. Out of the 4 deals I invested in, 3 of the teams got founders leave. And then also employees inherently they leave. Many of them don't stay all the way until IPO or exit. How do you financially pay out, pay back, keep this equity around so that they get they're part of the exit? How do you balance the financial stability of a company with that, like almost in the next round, maybe then they are paid back? Can you maybe comment on that?
Yes, so I mean, until Series A, there's really like too much uncertainty to basically redistribute the risk what employees or co-founders took. So at Volero, we asked Cherry Ventures during the round if we could allocate 300,000 of the current investment to pay back to former employees, because you don't want to have former employees on your cap table because they don't add value. You want to distribute this equity to current employees to incentivize them more. They disagreed. They said the 300K needs to be in the company right now, which, you know, at this stage, I would have done it differently, but I appreciated they canceled this deal. So now for sure in Series B, we will try again. It will be more expensive though.
Because it's like debt, right? And the investors don't want you to pay back debt.
Yes, yes. And probably they're also not aware, you know, that they want their stake to increase every time, but they don't understand that the debt, the provisions of the social security that you need to put back on your balance sheet, they don't think about this, right? But it's expensive. It becomes expensive. But also, the further a company is in their journey, the more you have the capital to pay it off then.
And your advice would be pay back as much as you can so you keep the equity, or because it can get very expensive, like 50 or 100K, you don't have this seed.
My first advice would be don't hire people who go away after 2 years. It's impossible, you know, people, they move on in their careers. The second advice would be take the chance to clean up every time you can.
I've got a question. What if ex-employees refuse to be paid out? Can you legally force them to sell user shares back? Or can they hold on to it? Because I know that it's very difficult just from normal.
Yes, standard employee stock option plans have a repurchasing clause in the plan, usually within the 2 years of termination of the employee. So it's pretty standard that you have this, and then you would not repurchase shares, but the option itself. So it's not yet exercised option, so they're not yet shareholders. Very easily done.
I think it was Brian Chesky who said that, like, hire faster. So if I am a founder who hires very fast, then around the time that the vesting schedules are like hitting limit, if I fire people, then I lose no shares and equity, yet I run the company for the next one. Why don't people actually practice this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very unfair, because like people have worked for 4 years, and if you then terminate them right before their vesting end, I think it's something that I, as a person, I could not stand behind. The core value of an entrepreneur that you need to decide, do I want to be a nice person or a bad person? So that's the first thing. So I believe it's, you know, and I'm talking about building an employer branding. People talk.
Yeah, the reputation.
It's a reputation topic. If you do that once, everybody will know, nobody will join. You will also, probably investors will not like it, to have this reputation. So that's the first one. Then second is vesting period is very nice. Also for founders, by the way. I saw a post recently where somebody proposed a 10 years vesting period in a shareholders agreement for founders. I think it's very smart. Company building takes time. If you're not committed to go on a 10 years journey when you build your company, you're the wrong person, because it will take time, and it's 10 years of suffering. trust me. But it's nice. It has also its perks, you know. You learn a lot. You are very flexible. You talk to so many inspiring people out there. So take the time. What else can I say about that? For employees, 4 years vesting is what the standard is. I would not change it. It's always linear. So the first year is a cliff. After that, you vest 25%, and then on a monthly basis, 2.87%. That's what the standard, or no, 2.08%. That's what the standard is. Don't change it. At Bolero, we had 3 years vesting period when I joined. When I saw the ESOP package to my, I signed very gladly. I came into the company, I immediately changed that. So, I mean, why should you give 3 years vesting period? It's not standard. And it's also after 3 years, you vest a full package of ESOP. Why? I mean, you want to keep the people.
Is it seen also badly by investors, or?
They commented on it, yes, but it was not a blocker. Security, I mean, one of the things, cybersecurity, make sure that this is really like just housekeeping. It's very diligent, it's nasty, you know, have your computers in a managed device service, have your software single sign-on with all your software service. Don't try to maintain shadow ITs of, you know, especially big founder teams are very, very good in that. You know, we have 4 founders at Voliere, and then I got invited by our CEO to our corporate Notion page 2-3 weeks ago, and he said, "Hey Simon, let's try to figure out to move to Notion from Confluence." A nice story. And then, okay, good. I found a separate Volero instance on Notion where I have been invited a couple of months back, but I didn't realize. So what I did is basically I went to one of them. There was only one member in this team space or in this workspace, which was one of the technical founders. And I didn't see any content in this workspace. So what I did, I just deleted the whole workspace. And then like 3 days later, he texted me, "Hey, Simon, we were the only 2 members of this workspace. So where is it gone? There's a lot of like information in that Notion that I need." And, you know, yeah, we reached out to support. It seems like we can recover it. Don't allow shadow IT, kill it, even if it hurts sometimes. It's communication, you know. Set up a 1Password account for the company, and very easy, but you can, it's a culture topic. I always tell people in our onboarding meeting, every employee has an onboarding meeting with me where I present the company, the values. I always say culture beats or eats strategy and processes for breakfast. Yeah, so that's what I tell them, you know, you need to communicate that I know Firefox is nice, but don't use it. It's not as safe as whatever browser of your choice that you manage from central instance.
Or what we always had was every time when new people joined, and there were times where there were 30 or 40 people per month, like they would all get an email from my CEO co-founder, "Hey, can you like quickly buy this Amazon thing somewhere?" And some people actually then were like, "Oh, the CEO called me or wrote me," and it was just phishing attempts. And we had that on like every month, like, and this is also where we started to just like proactively tell them, "Hey, Philip won't tell you to buy something on Amazon, like just ignore it." And so, yeah, and then over time we even started to probe them once we had the security guy, just to make sure that people are aware about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, physical security is just the next step. We are a hardware company. Most of you guys might consider founding hardware companies. You know, your IP is literally on every table when you walk into the office. Make sure that everyone who enters your office signs an NDA. Make sure that nobody takes pictures. Make sure that, you know, nobody sees through the windows. Also, one thing with the broken window theories, I think it's very important. I put it there. Tomorrow we have our fall cleaning day where the whole company cleans up the whole office. from CEO to every engineer, come together, and I always open the presentation in the morning with a picture of a broken window, and I tell them, look guys, if your window is broken, then you will most likely have somebody to go in and steal stuff or to break more. It's just nobody will buy a product from a company that has a window that is broken. It's just all connected. You need to be very structured and clean and tidy to make sure that your company is efficiently running. And every single broken window will hinder you in your success. So make sure it's clean, make sure it's secure, managed centrally. And I think there's a lot of tools and mechanics how you do it. And phishing is the start, and then you have later when you have 200, 300, 400 people in, employee trainings. We don't have this in place, but there's a lot of ideas around that as well. Yes, cool. I talked a lot again. Sorry about that. I hope it was interesting or at least, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. First, a big round of applause. It's a personal thing. Like, what are mistakes that and it doesn't need to be in finance or ops, but what are things that you see founders do over and over again that could be mitigated?
So I mean, the easiest way is when founding your company, and this is also why my own startup failed, your cap table needs to be investable. So in the company that I founded, the guy who had the idea and the first market access, like customer relation, he held 70% of the company, and after like 9 months, he said, "Oh, I have a job at Zurich Insurance," which probably paid him like $500,000 or so. And he's going to be the chairman of the company, and advise the startup. But Simon, you, the CEO, you will run it. It's all good. Then I went out to venture capital firms and asked them for money, and they're like, "So your cap table is like 70% this guy, you have 15%, and then you have the CTO co-founder with a little bit, and another business angel who invested in the beginning." So and then it was not investable. It was like a dead child that was born from the beginning. So if you build up your equity, make sure that, and I would also limit co-founders, and sorry to take your example here, it's too many, there will be conflict. There will be conflict. So take your best buddy that you want to work with and found it, the two of you. Try not to get your professor on the cap table. Try not to get your first advisors on the cap table unless they invest a significant amount of money. That's my first advice in building. And then legal stuff, again, don't customize your shareholder agreement. It's a standard contract that needs to be understood by the first investor. If they don't understand it because it has a really weird clause here and there, they would just say, "Sorry, red flag, I will not invest." So that's the second one. And then the third one is just, do it. Do the mistakes, the easy ones. Just don't do the stupid mistakes that others have done before, right? So talk to people that have built companies.
Thank you. Is there any other question that you have that you still want to ask? Otherwise, do you have?
Yeah.
Okay. Last question.
Last question, yes. Thank you for your presentation, by the way. Yeah. So you already mentioned this example of distribution in the US. They prefer a US entity to interact with. Maybe if you distribute to China, they prefer a Chinese, and it's probably because they want avoid legal uncertainty. If there's some kind of challenging getting a dispute or something, it's under local law then. So also with respect to investment, sometimes many people, or if not all startups, they go for a Delaware C Corp when they get US investors. But what about, and you also mentioned the other thing, that don't over-engineer your whole financial setup from the start. But for example, if I want to raise across Europe as a Swiss startup, and you probably already feel what's coming, should I create a Delaware C Corp because they trust this one more than a Swiss one or a French one or a German one, just because it's much easier, but you inherently, for a pre-seed startup, end up with a Delaware C Corp and a Swiss subsidiary, but it's just easier. There's now also in the European countries, there's like this EU Inc., EU AC movement that's coming up, which is supposed to resolve that. Maybe you can share a bit of opinion or advice on how you would organize those things. For example, I want to raise from Cherry Ventures and UK-based investors. Okay, if they're very big, they're probably comfortable with investing in Switzerland as well, but some angels in Finland, they would probably prefer a Delaware C Corp over a Swiss AG. So what's your opinion?
So as a lawyer myself, I mean, I think it's a stupid thought because if anyways, every investor is being taxed where they are locally residents, right? So it really doesn't matter. And then again, as a founder in Switzerland, I mean, if you hold shares from a C Corp, you're taxed in Switzerland anyway. So that doesn't change. But yes, that's what I meant with talk the language of your stakeholders. And that's very important in customers, but also in investors. I've seen a trend where also US investors are more open to deploy funds internationally. So we have US investors investing in this company. But then again, I mean, I think it's a fundamental decision where you want to build your core team, the CEO and your company. If you go to the US or Switzerland, what I would say is it's still easier in the US to raise funds. So if you want to build your company, make sure, or if you want to raise very quickly or you have customers or a first market that you want to enter, go to the US and found your C Corp. But then again, it will be a life decision because don't found your company because in C Corp and live in Switzerland just because it might solve your problem in the future.
No, it's not for future. It's really if I want to raise maybe some, I don't know, some Czech investor says, no, I'm not familiar with how, if there's a legal dispute with Spain, let's say you're a Spanish startup, it will be in Spanish. I don't know. I prefer to have my legal disputes in US court.
Yeah,
So I prefer you as a Spanish startup have your Delaware C Corp mother company.
It needs to be a substantial investment to make any legal changes for this.
It would be just hypothetically.
Yeah. Hypothetically, I would say again just try to convince them to speak your standard language in your regulation. So in our case, Switzerland, or if you want to found your first company in the US. And then again, I think globalization for investment have been like coming over the last
follow-up. Like in accounting, you have like US GAAP and other accounting practices that probably many of the highest grade students know as well. Is there something similar in investing then that is really generally, sure, you have term sheets and the terms, and we saw those in the tech investing course also a bit here, but sometimes there's some jurisdiction misalignments that makes things work very differently.
No, not really. It's really across across Western Europe. I'm not familiar with Asia, but across Western Europe also it's the same language, it's the same structures.
Thank you very much, and it was nice having you. For you, like now, like you're free until, and as we said in the before, like tomorrow between 9 and 10:30, you have time. We will be here, but of course you can work wherever you want. And at 10:30 we will have a guest lecture, so be back here at 10:30, and that is then the official start of the last day. Have a nice evening and see you tomorrow morning. Ja. I really like it.
Yeah, it's a super important topic. Every year it's well just from point of view.
Yeah, and also that's that we talked about.
ask you a question.
I had it before and it
I have receipt handling in it.
I get that.
That's the first thing that you do. You open a folder, credit card receipts, and another one for bills. You share this with your accountant. Just accept what I would do is
Our type
What I would
draw. I mean, just
that immediately push the receipt.
Ah, okay.
United like everything everywhere. You need to, I don't know.
That's what that
Because I mean, he is not on board.
Now we have effect and we're just transitioning.
So he, like also yesterday.
Very good.
Okay, but I mean, he didn't take part in any way. He don't care. He just don't care.
For inventory and
Like stuff. Honestly, I don't think I'm on the right side. We have.
I'm from Belgium, so we are major country.
You can go back.
I don't know.
So right, it's all in either. Sometimes very hard.
Yes.
These things or being like we have.
I don't now. This one I don't really.
Yeah, we can.
That's the only move, right? Yeah. It will be very. For me, it will be super hard to argue for
Everything.
It's hard. I mean, that's also what we don't have. We have our own health platform to like manage subscriptions, which is do, and now we need to connect our native business.
Sometimes it's strange that if you look at the original he had
Many organizations.
well, it's a technology. Because I had exactly the presentation he said, okay, it's just a fraction. It's actually that's not a company. It's an idea for a paper. Yeah, I don't know. I'm surprised. It's really like not a company. It's a purpose.
I talked to Alex. I went with them. I mean, even without banking.
Yes, again, that's.
Oh, even for the framer.
I mean, how
Even the big then you need to modify anything no I mean I don't remember it anything but he did something again but everything that is over the problem you're right
Never. Never the game behind.
I don't think he understands
We also learn from Alex.
he's the one who made it yeah he said today that
But I want to. Yeah, we all do. Panda dog. Yeah, you all. Everything is employment or.
There's only certain clauses. All our investments done through DocuSign. Employment contracts need to be legal and
You know why? Why this is?
it's just because the law is following the signature and the federal court signature as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Are you going to switch?
Employment contracts is what the clause is integrated time signing IP.
yes exactly
So you can choose not to have it. Or not.
yes exactly
Only holds for the.
Yes.
For this.
Also non-compete, by the way, the statement.
Ah, really? That's
Oh
very
yeah,
common.
because it's inside of the employee. Are you also coming?
Yes.
Basically,
Yes, yeah.
statements.
Didn't we also?
Yeah.
it's only from my hand